Hi there, my name is Stuart Palmer. I worked as a secondary school mathematics teacher in New South Wales for over 25 years. These days, during term 3, I run HSC Study days for Year 12 students all over New South Wales. I put this video together to help students prepare for their HSC examination for Mathematics Standard 2 for the year 2019 onwards. As you can see, this video is very long, so you may want to take a break every so often. The video includes advice about how to make the most of the time you have left before your trial and before the actual HSC exam, and how to make the most of the time during the exam, and hopefully to maximize your result. As you can see, the syllabus has changed a bit since 2001. We've gone from general maths to mathematics general and now mathematics standard. However, you need to be aware that many of the questions going right back to 2001 are still relevant to the standard syllabus, and they make a great study resource. In your HSC Maths exam, some of the questions will relate to topics you completed in Year 11, so don't forget to review those. And of course, a large number of questions will come from the Year 12 topics, including the brand new in 2019 networks and critical path analysis. This has never been in our syllabus before in New South Wales, so you won't be able to find HSC questions on that one prior to 2019. There's plenty of things you could be doing even if you're in Year 11 or halfway through Year 12. For example, it would be a really good idea to make a summary of every topic as you finish each topic. You should be able to fit this onto 1 or 2 A4 pages. Best way to do it is to make notes like this, cut them out, arrange them onto an A4 page, stick them down, and then scan it and save it in a place like Google Drive so that you could access that information anytime 24/7 rather than doing the scrolling wheel of death back through your textbook or the flick, 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 flick through your notes trying to find something you wrote 12 months ago. From 2019 onwards, reading time has changed from 5 minutes to 10 minutes. I kind of wish we didn't have it at all. Nevertheless, I think you might find that 10 minutes will feel like eternity. Some students I know try to read the entire exam. I don't think that's a great idea. You should have a plan about what you intend to read. You might decide to read just the multiple choice questions. And while you are reading those carefully, you can actually have a plan about what you are going to do when you are allowed to start writing. Alternatively, you may decide to read the questions just after the multiple choice questions. They tend to be fairly straightforward questions, and that might give you a boost of confidence as you begin to answer questions. On the other hand, you might want to see what challenges await you at the end of the exam. So you might want to read the second half of the exam very carefully and get familiar with those questions. This is where you are most likely to find some questions worth 4 or possibly 5 marks. You will probably find that time flies once you start writing. You need to go into the exam with a plan for how best to use the time. Some people rush in the early stages and make a lot of unfortunate, unforced errors. Some people spend way too much time on the first half and then get in a fluster in the second half and run out of time and make unfortunate mistakes. This is an example of a time plan. I suggest you take an old-fashioned watch with 2 hands to your exam rather than a stopwatch with those flashing hundredths of seconds, or the clock on the wall in the hall, which may be a long way away from you. I suggest you arrange yourself so that when they say you can start reading now, your watch says 11:50. And then when they say you can start writing now, your clock will say 12 o'clock. And from that moment on, with just a quick glance, you'll be able to see how much time you've used and how much time you have left. Multiple choice has changed down to 15 questions, 1 mark each. I reckon 25 minutes should be enough. Don't get bogged down. In the past, some of those questions have been ridiculously wordy, long-winded, and tricky for the sake of just 1 mark. You may be better off coming back to them later on and having a guess if necessary. Based on past exams, there are easier marks to be had in the questions that come after the multiple choice. So my advice, 12:25, move on, come back later if necessary. When you get into section 2, you have 85 marks to go. I have 2 different strategies for you. I used to do long distance running, and I used to really like it. In the last 5Ks or so, there would be signs on the side of the road, 5Ks to go, 4Ks to go, 3Ks to go. Likewise in cycling. If you like that idea, you might do what I've suggested here. Go back to the back of the exam and count backwards. And when you get to 20, make a mark on the exam and write yourself a note, 20 marks to go. Count back another 20 and write 40 marks to go. Count back another 20 and write 60 marks to go. And then you're into it. You've got 125 minutes to score those 85 marks. Different strategy. Nessa tells us there's going to be a halfway marker in section 2. So if you're a fast worker, you could aim to do the multiple choice and the first half of section 2 by 1 o'clock. And then you could aim to finish section 2 by 2 o'clock. Either way, when it gets to 2 o'clock, I would suggest that you put down your pen, you have a stretch, you close your eyes, and you take a deep breath in and out. And then you should read the remaining questions, the one you haven't had time to do yet. You should put a mark next to the questions you like the most, and you should do those questions first. Maybe by 2:15, you'll be ready to finish the multiple choice, any other parts you've missed, and check a few things for a 2:30 finish. When you're looking at your answers, always ask yourself the big question: does that answer actually make sense? You'll have this reference sheet attached to your exam. Make sure you are very familiar with what's on there. It's less than 1 page, shorter than the previous one, but there are some useful pieces of information on it. In addition to that, Nessa has stated that useful information, such as a formula or some conversion between units of measurement, may be provided within particular questions. As you proceed through year 11 and 12, you should keep an ongoing list like this one of every single formula you use. This document would be very handy as you prepare for the trial and the HSC. You can notice here it's not just the formula. I've also made notes about what the variables stand for. There's a diagram that goes with it, a couple of examples of how to use the formula, a textbook reference, and some HSC questions from previous years where that formula would have been useful. When it comes time to use a formula, take your time, look at the reference sheet, and choose the formula carefully. Write it down carefully. Unbelievable how many students make a mistake when they're copying the formula into the writing space. So write down the formula, carefully do the substitution, do the calculation. I've heard that some students in the HSC exam are still confused about expressions and equations. On the left, we have an expression. Expressions can be simplified, or you can substitute numbers into them. On the right, we have an equation. On the left, expressions can be simplified, which usually makes them shorter, simpler, but you don't ever find out what the value of x is. On the other hand, on the right-hand side, we have an equation. Equations can be solved. Equations come with an equal sign embedded in them. And as you work through the equation, your goal is to find a value for x. Keep in mind that every multiple choice question is only worth 1 mark, so you probably don't need to do that much working to get the mark, especially question 5, because the early questions tend to be easier. There was a shortcut at the bottom of this slide which could have been done without using the tree diagram at all. Keep an eye out for this one. It's a bit of a trap for young players. The diagram shows 3 measurements. 2 of them are in meters, one's in centimeters, mixed units. Watch out for that. But before you do any calculations, look at the 4 possible answers. They've all been expressed in cubic centimeters. So go back to the diagram. Rather than changing the centimeters to meters, it might be a good idea to convert the meters to centimeters. A surprising number of students got this question incorrect. So a piece of advice, before you start doing any calculations whatsoever, take a good look at the 4 possible correct answers and then cross out answers that don't make any sense. Sometimes 1, 2, or 3 of the answers can actually be deleted because they're just nonsense. In this case, I can see the number in the question is very, very close to 0. Answer C and answer D contain positive powers of 10. So they're going to be really, really big numbers. So straight away, I've crossed off C and D. Then I've got A or B. Well, A has a 0 before the decimal point. That is not the way it's supposed to be, whereas B begins with a 1-digit number, 3.26. I like the look of B. Here's another example. We're starting with 72. We're going to increase by 20% and then decrease by 20%. So answer D is clearly silly. Answer C, trap for the unsuspecting, increase by 20%, decrease by 20%, that actually doesn't take you back to where you started. So it has to be A or B. I'm suspecting it's B. That sounds pretty reasonable. I would do a quick calculation just to confirm, but B looks pretty good to me. Syllabus has changed from Simpson's rule to trapezoidal rule. Either way, we're trying to estimate the area of this shape. Looks pretty close to being a rectangle, and if it was a rectangle, it would be 40 by 19, which is 760. So I think D is a bit of a silly answer, so we can eliminate that one straight away. Before every exam, don't forget to check that your calculator is in degrees mode, not radians or some other thing. Simple way to check is to look for a D or a DEG in the window of your calculator. And if you really want to be certain, you can press sine 30 and then equals, and your screen should show 0.5. Not a bad idea for a major exam to take a spare calculator with you, the same as the one you would normally use. You might have to borrow it from somebody. Anyhow, it would be good to have 2 calculators just in case one malfunctions on the day. This is a fairly common error, especially with people who use the Casio models. If you type -3 and then press the button that will square that number, your calculator will say -9. That's probably not the answer you are hoping for, because when the number -3 is squared, i.e. multiplied by itself, it should be +9, not -9. So make a note to self somewhere that when you put negative numbers into your calculator, you should put them in brackets. This was an HSC question where that went badly for some Casio users. We've got a squared, take away 3a. We're substituting -5. And you can see in the window there that the -5 in brackets was squared. And then we subtracted 3 lots of -5 in brackets. Correct answer 40. Please check that on your calculator. Try it with the brackets and without the brackets. It might be different. There are two types of standard deviation. You need to know how to calculate both of them: population, standard deviation, sample, standard deviation. Every year, NESA updates the list of approved calculators. In 2019, they made an announcement that 2 of the Casio models will not be approved in 2020 and beyond. So if you have those models, maybe you should change. They're okay for 2019, but not for 2020 and beyond. On the big day, when it comes time to use your calculator, this is what the examiners would like you to write down. You can see that a calculation has been performed, and I have shown that the answer to that calculation was a long decimal that went on and filled up my screen and beyond. So I've told them that by writing down the first 4 decimal places and the dot, 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 and then I have rounded it off to 2 decimal places. It's highly possible that you would need to take that answer and use it for another calculation. So you have a choice. Should you use the unrounded or the rounded version? As a general rule of thumb, you should never use rounded off decimals for further calculations. You might even want to find out, when you do a calculation like that, how to store that answer into the memory of the calculator so that you can easily recall it without having to retype it. In section 2 of the exam, you will be writing solutions into writing spaces like this one. These pages will be scanned, and markers from any part of New South Wales will be sitting at a computer screen looking at a scanned version of your work. The number of lines in each space gives you a rough idea of how much work is likely to be required. This one has 6 lines. You don't need to fill all 6 of them, but for a question that has 6 lines like that, there's probably a few steps to do, and you should write down what you did, not just your final answer. My advice is as follows. You could put a line down the middle, like I did, or just an imaginary line really, and you should start in the very top left-hand corner of the left-hand column, and you should work your way down that column. And the last thing you should write is your final answer. That leaves the right-hand side of that space just in case you change your mind and you want to have another go, or you just don't have enough room. You might decide that your first attempt was a bit dodgy, so then you might have a second attempt. Don't cross the first one out until you have finished the second attempt. If you are convinced the second one is better, you could put a circle around the first one, put a cross through it. But make sure the markers can still see the work you have crossed out. Don't black it out with a texter or liquid paper or correction tape. Just do what I've done there so the markers can still see what you did. If you totally run out of space, there will be a blank page with extra writing space at the end of the paper. If you use this page, you need to be really careful to make sure that you indicate exactly what question you were doing, not just the question, but it could be 28D part 3, the question and the part and the subpart. Here is a collection of advice. Black pen. Black is the best one to use. It scans well. Write neatly and clearly. This is not a drill. This is the grand finale. Write full words and complete sentences. This is not a text message. The markers may not appreciate your obscure teenage abbreviations. Stay on the lines in the writing space. Don't cross over into the margins of the page. Don't go too close to the edge of the page. It might get cut off in the process of scanning. And don't cross anything out till you are sure you have a better solution, and don't cover anything up. When you are reading a question, underline key words and information. It's a pity you can't do this during the reading time, but even so, do it anyway. Take a moment to reorganize the given information into rows and columns like this. Check carefully that you have copied the numbers correctly from the question into the writing space. When you are doing a long response like this one, make sure that you don't lose any zeros from one line to the next or accidentally include an extra zero. It happens a lot. In the HSC exam, there are often questions with multiple linked parts. In this question, the letter B indicates that this is a brand new question, unrelated to anything that happened prior to it. But the part 1, part 2, and part 3 indicate that these are linked, connected parts, and we may need to use answers from one part in future parts. A couple of suggestions from me. I think you should read the whole lot before you start part 1, just to see where the question is heading and see how the parts relate to each other. Don't forget to highlight or underline key words and information. And don't give up. Make sure you try all the parts. Believe it or not, sometimes the last part is the easiest part of the whole question. But by that stage, some students have just given up and moved on to the next thing. This I find very surprising. In recent years, there have been a number of questions like this, with a great big table slap bang in the middle of the question. To my surprise, many students have ignored that table and gone looking for a formula to use instead. Honestly, if you see a table like that, they really want you to use it. In questions like this, take a look at the marks down the right-hand side. For 1 mark, it's probably straightforward, maybe only one calculation, but don't just write down the answer, write down the calculation and the answer. On the other hand, for 3 marks, there's probably going to be a number of calculations to be done. So if you think part 3 is really straightforward, maybe you should think again. For 3 marks, there's usually at least 2, possibly 3 or more things to be done to get the correct answer. Under the pressure of an examination, it is very easy to make an unforced error. So here comes some advice. Every time you finish a part of a question and you think you have an answer and you're in a hurry to move on, I think you should do these 3 things and ask yourself some questions. Have I really answered the question? In this case, the question says, what is the maximum number of standard drinks? The answer turns out to be 5.856. Normally you would round that up to 6 and call it 6 drinks. But in the context of this question, that is a bad answer because the person would then be over the legal limit. So for this one, note it was worth 3 marks. The 3rd mark was dedicated to that little conclusion at the end. Just writing 5 drinks or 6 drinks wasn't enough to score 3 out of 3, and it wasn't a case of rounding up, it actually was a case of rounding down. Here's another one about simple interest. So you would be tempted to use the formula for simple interest, but that formula will give you the interest, whereas the question is asking for the future value of the investment. So you need to go back and take the investment and add the interest to get the future value. Next, look at your answer and make sure it has been expressed correctly. 2 decimal places, could be 2 significant figures, could be nearest degree, hours and minutes, nearest litre. Sometimes that's worth a mark and you wouldn't want to lose a mark for that. You also need to check that you have done absolutely everything you were required to do. Apparently, in these two questions, part 2 and part 3, where it asked for the time and the day, apparently a lot of students gave the time, didn't write the day, and that cost them. So make sure you've done everything. And really importantly, ask yourself the big question: does the answer actually make sense? Is it reasonable? This was a bit of a tragedy. Students could see this triangle in the exam, two sides, 211, 287. A lot of students correctly used the cosine rule like this and then stopped with a ridiculously large answer. They forgot to finish it off. They forgot to do that. So they got a crazy large answer of 176,000. Here's one from financial maths. We're trying to have $20,000 15 years from now. So the answer to this should not be more than 20,000, and I don't think it would be something less than $5,000 either. Mind you, in a question like that, you might realize your answer doesn't make sense, and then you're faced with a difficult decision. What should I do? Should I try and fix it? That can chew up a lot of time. Trying to play spot the error can really chew up valuable minutes. Might be better off just to make a mark on the page, and if you've got time left over at the end, maybe you've got time to come back and have another go and find the mistake you made. Don't do this. Some students like to fudge. Fudging is when you change a few numbers here and there so it looks like you got it right, even though you didn't. Don't do it. The markers are paid to find those fudgings. They look at every single thing you write, not just the final answer, and they tend to penalise people who fudge quite severely because their fudging has actually introduced additional errors into the working. Don't forget, when you are solving equations, one of the nice things about equations is that when you get a solution, you should be able to tell whether your solution is right or wrong. For example, if you think the answer to this equation is x equals 3, and you have a bit of time at the end, you could pick up your calculator and substitute your possible solution into the left-hand side. 5 times 3 plus 1, put that over 3 and take away 4, press equals. Hold that thought. 5 take away 7 times 3, press equals. Did I get the same result? Oh, no, I didn't. Should try that again. Likewise with simultaneous equations, you think you have found the point of intersection. You may have drawn the graphs already. You got 3, 1 as the point of intersection. Y equals 1. So y equals 1 equals 2 times 3. Oh, that's not right. 1 equals 7. That can't be right. If I had time, I could have another go. If you're one of those people who gets quite bamboozled by algebra, here's a suggestion. You might want to pause the video right now and read this question really carefully. We've got 20 meters of fence, 3 sides. Well, what we could do is just make something up. We could try making this side here equal to 5. If we did that, this side here would be equal to 5. And we've got 20 altogether. So 20, take away 5 leaves 10. 5, 5, and 10. That means the area is 5 times 10, which is 50. Then, because this question is multiple choice, we could try substituting 5 into the first answer. 10 times 5, take away 5 squared. That's 25, not 50. That didn't work. 10 times 5, take away. That didn't work. 20 times 5, that's 100. Take away 5 squared. That didn't work. I'm aiming for 50. I think you'll find, press pause if you like, I think you'll find that D is the only one which gives me the answer I'm looking for, which is the area of 50. Not a bad little trick sometimes. This particular question had a very low success rate. I think it was something like 22% of the students got it correct. That figure would have been higher if everybody guessed or everybody knew this trick. Quite often in HSC questions, you get something that you don't see in your textbook very often. The answer to the question is actually in the question. There it is, 16 hours. That's the answer. That's your goal. That's your target. So that should be the last thing you write down, not the first. And what you need to do to score 2 marks, you need to convince the marker that you would have got that answer, 16, even if it wasn't part of the question. Things could go badly though. You might try the question and you get the answer of, say, 12. If that happens, I suggest you just leave the 12, make a mark, come back later and try and fix it. But then you discover that you need that answer in the next part, part 2, and you've got a dilemma. You had 12, they had 16. What are you going to do? Are you going to use the 12 or the 16 when you do part 2? Well, guess what? Their answer is correct. You should use their answer, not yours. Just leave yours as 12, move on, use their answer in part 2. Even worse, imagine this. You tried to do part 1. You couldn't get started. You don't have an answer at all. But you move on to part 2 and you try to do that, and then you realize that you can't do part 2 because you don't have the answer for part 1. What are you going to do? Simple. Go back to part 1, read the question again, and just invent an answer. Just something that sounds fairly reasonable. And write that down in part 1. And then go back to part 2 and use that invented answer and write down every single calculation you did very, very carefully. In the HSC, you can still get full marks for part 2 and part 3, even if part 1 was just an invented incorrect answer, so long as, number 1, you show every little scrap of working out, even if it seems trivial, and number 2, your invented answer did not make part 2 or part 3 any easier than it would have been. But that hardly ever happens. Many questions in the HSC contain a diagram. I suggest a couple of things here. That while you're reading the question, you can add information to the diagram. You might add extra letters to label the diagram. And when you go from part 1 to part 2, etc., and you're getting answers, you should add them to your diagram. And possibly most importantly, if you look for an answer on a particular place on a diagram, put some sort of mark there, like an asterisk. And then in the writing space, you could say something like, from the diagram, and that will indicate to the marker exactly where you were looking. Here's a question where a diagram was given in the question, but the extra information may have been in the question or it may have been an answer from some other question. So that has been added to the diagram to make future parts easier. In this question, information has been added, including an extra point R, so that you could write something like angle PQR equals 58 degrees in the writing space. Here's a question where a line had to be drawn on a scatter plot. A couple of suggestions here. I have actually used the graph to answer part 6 and part 7, and for the marker I have labelled what I was doing, and I have shown the marker where I was looking, and how I answered the question. If there were a couple of key points that you used to draw that line, make sure they're nice and big and easily visible. Keep in mind again that this work will be scanned. And remember, this is not a drill. Use a ruler. In fact, buy yourself a brand new 30 centimetre clear plastic ruler for the big day and use it for all straight lines. This one involves sketching a curve. The word sketch causes some confusion. In mathematics, a sketch is not a rough drawing. It is a neat and fairly accurate representation. In this case, the dots came first, and then the dots were joined freehand with a nice smooth curve. If you need to draw two graphs on the same plane, write the equation close to each graph so the marker can see which one is which. Pencil or pen? My advice is do the drafting with a pencil, rubbing out and fixing as you go, then go over it with a black pen when you are happy with it. You may be required to complete a partially drawn graph. Same advice, draft with pencil, then finish off with pen. By the way, the least squares line of best fit always passes through a point which is defined by the mean x value and the mean y value of that set of points. In this subject, there are some graphs you are expected to recognize by sight or to be able to draw quickly. By the way, cubic curves were in the general syllabus, but don't get a mention in the standard syllabus. It is also handy to know how to take one of those graphs and make simple changes to it, such as these. If you need to draw a tree diagram, give yourself plenty of space to write fractions on the branches and make sure that they are readable. Here are some key words and phrases you will find in quite a few HSC questions from previous years, but you don't see them very often in the textbooks. Why? Show that, prove that, explain, justify, compare and contrast. Questions like these require some words on the page, so use your words. A calculation alone probably won't get full marks. These questions can be somewhat challenging and unusual, but you should give them your very best shot. Here's one of my favourites. You might like to pause the video just for a moment and have a careful read of this question. The computer was purchased for $3,600. In part 2, it says that the computer will be losing 30% in value every year. And the question says, explain why the computer would never be worth nothing. Calculations are required, but for 2 marks, it's more than just the calculation. Some words in complete sentences were required. There are many ways you could do this question. This is my favorite. Set up a table to show the marker that you understand how declining balance depreciation works. But just do the first 2, 3, 4 years. And notice in the third row, I'm using labels A, B, and C. That's going to save me a lot of writing. And then I can write some short but complete sentences making reference to A, B, and C. So questions like this, you don't have to write an essay for 2 marks. That would be ridiculous. No need for an essay. Could be a diagram, could be a table. There could be markers like those A, B, and C on a diagram or on a table, but you do need to mount a careful explanation. Suggestion, pretend you are writing to somebody who normally sits next to you in class. He's been away for a few days. He's missed a bit of work. You're trying to explain something to somebody who just knows a little bit less than you do. That is your target audience. Here's another one. 4 marks this time. Terry says, I'm better than you, Kim. Is he correct? There were 2 data sets with some information. Justify your answer. You've got to use summary statistics and skewness. Is he correct? Is he correct? Is Terry correct? You need to make a decision. You need to make a decision and you need to argue the case. You could argue that Terry is correct. You could argue that Terry is incorrect. You could even sit on the fence a little bit and say that you don't have enough information, but you would need to explain what extra information you might need. That's a difficult path, that one. Be really careful not to contradict yourself. So we're coming to the end of the video now. Thanks for staying tuned. If I had to summarize this video using just 3 words, those words would be communicate, communicate, communicate. Correct answers are important, but in the HSC, a correct answer alone may not get full marks, especially if the question is worth 2, 3, 4, or even 5 marks. And keep this in mind. An incorrect answer in part 1 might cause part 2, 3, 4, 5 to be wrong, but correct working after part 1 can still get full marks if all your working and communication are correct. So thank you for watching this very long video. I hope you found it useful. All the best for your big day, your HSC Standard Maths exam. Bye now.